When I started motorcycle riding, I thought that the biggest danger lays in crashing. However, after 5 years I know the biggest danger lays in something else. How time flies. I've been riding motorcycles now for 5 years, and in this video wanted to share what I learned from my life and in motorbike riding, from everything from starting out to the first few big motorbike trips, everything from in between the Sahara desert all the way to the top of the Himalaya mountains, from working on my own motorbikes to even going racetrack riding. I hope that if you just start out motorbike riding, that this video helps you, and also that for everyone else who's just interested, that this maybe can bring you something for other parts of your life. And with that, let's go and welcome back to the Free Miles MC YouTube channel. A good time doesn't have to be expensive. When I started motorbike riding, I was 19 years old, so I was old enough to defend myself against basically the school where you do your license, trying to get as many hours out of you as they possibly can, which is like kind of a common practice in my home country, and licenses tend to be a bit expensive here. I managed to get my license in 2020 for let me think, I think 1,400 euros, and then got myself a Yamaha FCR 600 3HE for 600 quid, which is was quite a good bike for that price. They tend to go quite cheap, and got some motorbike gear for free off eBay, which is actually a really good tip. The majority of gear when it comes to bags, clothes, shoes, basically everything you can get for free on the apps. And I actually started out quite well with that. Managed my whole driving school, my first year of riding with that, and just had such a good time driving with my motorbike everywhere. I thought the motorbike just looked gorgeous. I was absolutely terrified of the thing. It didn't help that I put the A2 restrictor out basically instantly, and it didn't have any ABS, no traction control, 95 horsepower, fresh out of the year 1989. Not really a beginner bike. The clutch was so heavy that I felt like I was like rock climbing when it came to how sore my forearms felt, but it was all fine. It was a lovely experience. This was also kind of the reckless beginner phase of riding a motorcycle. Everyone goes through this, some people more, some people less. I went through it less, however it was still a bit sketchy. And what didn't help was that the pandemic was happening. And in my country, kind of, the confinement was over for 9 months. And like, it was rough on young people. We weren't able to see people. At the same time, a lot of structures for old people opened up, while unis and every kind of place where you could see each other was still like closed. So basically people started to meet up at like raves and like old British military bases and in between like layers of autobahn bridges, and I was kind of riding to these different things with my motorbike, just being the cool dude with the 1980s motorbike that would like rock up there, and it was a good time. And I barely drank, so it was completely fine, because I either left the bike there or went back home sober, and it was always the dude who rocked up on the cool bike. And some sketchy stuff happened as well. I remember there was an event where basically, well, it wasn't really an event. On a Sunday, I had read in the newspaper that there was some illegal street racing happening and people listening to music at one place in my hometown, and it said that there were, I think, 60 people who were there. And then I went there on a Monday, the day after, and there were over 1,000 people, because everyone was so starved of getting any kind of social action that everyone went there, and it was like a scene out of like Midnight Club. People dancing, people like blasting music from their cars, people going down the road. It was crazy, and I am not going to confirm that I took part in that with my motorbike, but it was definitely a wild phase, to say the least. I then started to see that I want to do some motorbike touring at the end of the pandemic, and got going on my first motorbike trip, but didn't make it far because my engine of my motorbike blew up. I wanted to see what my bike can do, went on the Autobahn, got up to 200, the bike blew up, rear wheel locked up, clutch ripped out, and I rolled out in like a cloud of smoke to the next gas station. And at the time I didn't have the roadside assistance thing that would get me home, so I had to sleep on the curb, and my parents had to pick me up with a trailer the next day. Kind of out of that, the idea for the next trip was born, because I wanted to go somewhere, and I got a Yamaha XJ 600, which was my second bike, which was also the first video on this channel was me reviewing that motorbike. And I wasn't too keen on it because it kind of looked a bit ugly, but like I then went on my first motorbike trip, and still everything very budget focused. Had a tent from Temu, had like a 70 quid top case that I put all my stuff in, and got going. And it's really impressive how much you can get done with such little money, and also that the bike was quite cheap had many other advantages, because I at the time had a girlfriend in Paris, and I was a lot in that area, and I commuted with my motorbike in Paris, and then realized how practical actually a motorbike is to get around. Like, just for reference, going from the Gare du Nord to the Arc de Triomphe takes about 20 minutes with the train, and with the motorbike it's like 3 to 4 minutes. So that's quite a difference, and just living with that motorbike in the city was such a lovely experience. I at the time dreamed about having a more classic bike, to feel a bit cooler. However, that was misguided, because like the bike was perfect for this kind of activity, because I didn't need to worry about it potentially getting stolen, which is also a big advantage on the rest of the trip. It's not always the obvious danger that gets you. I remember when I then went into Morocco and got deeper and deeper into Morocco, I realized what I was actually getting myself into, as I saw less and less cars in the Sahara Desert. And I remember I was with these 2 water bottles, and one of the water bottles fell off my motorbike and started leaking water. So all of a sudden I had a lot less water. And Morocco isn't too crazy of the countries than on the North African continent, but for me, being in a place like this for the first time and being like 20 was definitely quite something. And then also realizing I'm on a motorbike for 500 euros. I don't know how to work on a motorbike. I don't have any mechanical skills. If something goes wrong, I'm really fucked here. And also, like, a lot of these things are kind of avoidable with not doing stuff like this, because it's also in some ways kind of stupid. But there's a balance in between, the slight reckless adventure that you get, and the reason. And I at the time was still quite young, so basically my frontal lobe wasn't fully developed, which led me to kind of do all these things, and it was in many ways a good time. However, it sometimes got sketchy. I had a situation in the Sahara Desert where I crashed my motorbike, and some people came to help me, but they kind of pretended to help me, and it was a weird situation where they wanted me to come with them, and in the end of the day this was about money, and I kind of didn't have a choice then coming with them. I wouldn't now call it a kidnapping, but it was pretty close. It was a bit of a weird situation, and I was definitely really, really scared for my life there. I was pretty sure this is it, which was funny at the time, because I started this YouTube channel because I was, with the pandemic, backed into a corner financially and economically and career choice wise, and then had 35 subscribers, and was getting into a situation where I was like, yeah, this is it. And also everyone was so worried about me crashing on that trip, from my family and my friends and I myself, and then this shit was happening. So really often, not the thing that you worry about with motorbike riding can get to you. Everything turned out to be fine. I actually don't hold a grudge against these people who did that. But this is like this with many other things. I experienced this also on the road to Morocco. There was a big sandstorm in Spain that was quite sketchy. And then on later trips, in Iceland and so on, having very heavy side winds and freezing really, really badly in the cold, and losing feelings in my limbs due to bad weather. Definitely don't underestimate these kind of things. Especially in these first 2 years of riding, I was more reckless than I am now, and I think everyone who starts out motorbike riding kind of goes through that phase, and it's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you don't go above your limits. I remember before I had the YouTube channel, I was riding with a group that was definitely riding above their limits, and it was a bit sketchy, but in a way, it was a very natural form of community that is something that you don't really get in today's time that much. That's why I kind of hang around this group, because I met them on the curvy road and then just started chilling with them, and we did stuff in our free time, went out to ride bikes at night, and one time we a Hardy rider invited us to an unofficial ride out, and it turned out to be a lot bigger than we expected, and we actually got into a bit of trouble. Some of my friends had a lot of issues with that, and I'm telling you these things and also the stuff from earlier because we as humans nowadays are really not so much good with the society thing. A lot of things are not going in the right direction. However, the community aspect of many of these things that are basically parallel to what's happening that everyone else is doing usually work quite well, and that was also the circumstance in this case, even though then the group started drifting apart because I got more mature as a rider and another friend of mine got as well. But it's definitely a phase that, even though you gotta be careful with it, I definitely wouldn't avoid it. I and also my parents and my friends had the most worry about crashing my motorbike. I managed to get away without doing that for quite some time. However, I put a new engine into my FCR 600 at the time, and I didn't manage to leave my slight reckless phase without crashing a motorbike. I remember I went over the road that I'm showing here at a late evening, and I like I learned how to not that I shouldn't shift down mid corner, and I learned it the hard way with thinking that I'm in third. I was in second, letting the clutch go and high siding off the bike and being on the side of the bike and going like straight into a cornfield. I managed to not drop the bike, but I hurt myself quite a bit from all the pieces of corn hitting me. It was pretty fine, but I laid in bed for like 3-4 days. It was not a good time, and it definitely like scared some respect for the whole thing into me that I desperately needed at the moment. With the aspect of danger of motorbike riding being often such a big topic, it also like it influences your social dynamic and everything around it. Like motorbike riding at the time cost me about 2 relationships, I think, and my parents weren't too keen on it. They got along with it at some point, but also like in my circle of friends, they didn't mind, but because no one had money to move out, the parents of my friends realized that I ride a motorbike and they really didn't like it. Like some parents really overreacted with it. Like some dinner conversations went quite crazy. I had a friend who didn't even want to start riding a motorbike, and his mom was so scared that he starts riding motorbikes that she like threatened at the dinner table to put a steak knife through her thigh to kind of like blackmail everyone into her son not starting to ride motorbikes. And it's one of those things where people just go crazy. Like I think in many ways a drug habit would be more socially acceptable. Actually is, because like if you like look around in like your work circle and uni circle where there are people like your age that maybe don't ride motorbikes but definitely do drugs, their parents usually kind of half know and ignore and don't mind as much. Even though I gotta say my parents were with the motorbike riding at the end of the day quite chill. Don't be restricted by what you have. A lot of people think to do certain things with in life or on a motorbike, you need to buy certain things. You need to consume yourself into an ability to be part of something. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Because, like, for example, so many people buy, like, adventure bikes just to do, like, one trip. I did plenty of trips and don't own an adventure bike because I did enough riding outside of, like, doing trips that it didn't justify an adventure bike for me. And, like, you can get so much done. I, at the time, worked in a motorcycle dealership, and basically, I wanted to go to Iceland and put like off-road tires on my sports tour and just go, because that made this trip into my budget without like buying like a cheap enduro. So I did that, and everyone told me it's going to fail, it's not going to work, and at the end of the day it was perfectly fine. I rode off-road through the most beautiful landscapes of Iceland, managed river crossings, managed insane forms of weather, and that partially through like really, really lonely areas of Iceland, and it worked like a charm. And in a way, at that point, committing to that was relatively easy because my motorbike was cheap. I had a 500 euro motorbike. However, after this trip, because my bike was kind of ran down and I was like tired of like half fixing carburetors because my skill mechanic wise wasn't the best, so it was always like a temporary fix. I bought myself the only pricey motorbike that I got in the 5 years of motorbike riding, a Enfield Interceptor 650, which was already used for $4,000, and did a motorcycle surf trip with that where I attached my surfboard to the side of the motorbike. Actually, if you want to do that and own that kind of motorbike, I sell a motorbike surf rack for this motorbike that I make myself, so definitely check it out in the description. Would love to get some support for that product. Really, really lovely. And yeah, I got going on the road, and at the time I still avoided going off-road with the bike and doing anything too wild. I was really much looking after it, which is in some ways a good thing, but like I still realized the wear and tear on the motorbike from me going all these kilometers. I went from along the whole Atlantic coast, from France all the way like to Portugal and then all the way back, and basically I did over 10,000 kilometers on that trip with the surfboard on the side. And then was kind of really upset after the trip, seeing like how the bike had aged through the sea air, and my Japanese bikes handled that better. And that was a bit of a rough run for me, and I was close to selling the bike, and then basically brought it back to its former shape, and then decided, okay, fuck it, we're just riding the thing now. And I did a scrambler trip through the Balkans, where I scrambled the bike quite a bit. I in the beginning struggled with the ABS being on the bike because I was very used to bikes not having ABS, and with off-road riding that was a disadvantage. So I pulled the fuse and later installed the switch that made the ABS on and off switchable. And that worked really, really well. And my worry at the end of the day was kind of for nothing, because I didn't drop the bike, didn't crash the bike. It was all fine. I dropped it once because I parked it and then it sank into the ground, and it didn't get any scratches from it. So at the end of the day, my worry were kind of for nothing, and it worked really, really well. Owning something also means being able to maintain it. At the same time, my yearning for my first motorbike riding experience, the Yamaha FCR 600, got really, really big again. And the FCR 600 has a bit of an issue that if the engine gets older, it tends to blow up, like I already told you. So I got this bike over here, the FCR 1000, because it has a bit more of a solid engine. Got it for 900 quid on eBay, and then basically repaired it to the point that it was roadworthy. There were issues with like the neutral switch was broken. We had a few broken seals. It had a slipping clutch, and a few other issues. So I basically started rebuilding it in my garage, and similar to how with the traveling, a lot of people were like, oh, don't do it, it's not going to end well. It was the same experience here, and before I tried multiple times fixing things on motorbikes, and it didn't work out, and then basically I felt already really bad about doing this, but I basically then pushed through. I had a garage that was really far away from the place where I lived because I couldn't afford anything closer. So I always had to commute to the garage, and it was really, really bad. And it was winter and it was freezing cold, but I managed, with not a lot of space, not a lot of light, to push through, get this bike on the road. And in between, it was so scary because I had the whole bike apart. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, I'm not going to get this back together. It's going to be such a nightmare. And then it actually worked out. It's a bit sketchy riding a motorbike that you worked on yourself that has close to 150 horsepower, but it now has been going well for over a year, so that's really, really lovely. And just the experience of being able to maintain the things yourself and to know how the things work, and to, if something is wrong on the road, potentially being able to fix things yourself is a part of motorbike riding. It's a really good thing that I also got to learn that, and I'm really happy about that. And it was such a lovely experience, and for me it's part of being a motorbike rider. So that was really, really fulfilling. And I think in general in life, when it comes to where you live, your house, your place, if you're able to own one, then those things also come strongly in there. Also, these older motorbikes are not really a disadvantage compared to modern bikes. A lot of people say, oh yeah, I wouldn't ride such an old bike because, it's so outdated. That simply isn't true. These old bikes give you 90% of the experience that a modern bike gives. There are some bikes, like for example the VFR. Through the YouTube channel, I got to ride a lot of different motorbikes. The old VFRs from the 90s. If you close your eyes and ignore that they don't have ABS, they feel like a modern motorbike. These bikes are incredibly good. Same thing here with the FCR. I started working as a motorcycle journalist and went on the launch event of the Norton Manx R, the new superbike from Norton, and got to ride it on the racetrack. And it's a bike filled with technology, and you can feel when the technology interrupts, when you drive full speed into a corner and you brake with everything you have, and you feel the ABS slightly coming on, and you feel how often the ABS pump pumps basically, and where the limit is, and you kind of have to approach it a bit more careful. But at the end of the day, these things are really similar. I rode the Norton, managed to drag Lee on the Norton, and was really happy about that, had a really good experience, and then got back on my FCR and realized how close these things actually are, even though there are about 40 years of technology in between them. And I think it was the Norton Manx R signature, so it also over 50 grand difference, and the riding experience at the end of the day is very, very similar. So you don't necessarily need all the fancy stuff. It's completely fine having something that you can maintain yourself, and you barely sacrifice anything in the owning experience. You actually, in my opinion, I would say, gain quite a lot through it. The last lesson I kind of learned out of 5 years of motorbike riding is if you don't get into danger, it also kills you. This is a bit of a weird rephrasing of a quote that my mom used to say. There is a quote that I heard very often growing up from other people, teachers, grandparents, and so on, that said, wer sich in Gefahr bringt, kommt darin in German. And it was always stupid. And then my mom kind of used to say, to cheer me up when people would say that to me, wer sich nicht in Gefahr bringt, kommt darin as in the sense of, if you, it's a bit of a wordplay in German, it doesn't work in English, but if you would translate that, it means if you don't get into danger, it kills you. And what she kind of meant back then was that a lot of people lived really boring lives that basically were saying these things, and in a way haven't experienced parts of life for a really, really long time. And for them, this obsession with avoiding danger was pointless, because it ended up ruining their life in a different way. And that is also very, very true when it comes to the takeaways out of riding motorbikes. A lot of people don't start things like riding motorbikes, and I don't say everyone needs to start riding motorbikes, because like motorbikes are actually dangerous, so I totally get if people don't start riding. But the approach to living of saying, oh yes, I start motorbike riding and I try these things and I try it out, is really, really important in all kinds of sets of life and with so many things. Because if you don't, things in life pass you on. Because I remember before I started motorbike riding, I went surfing on like surf trips with friends, and then all the people started having like jobs and everything, and they stopped going on these trips with me, and I then wanted to get people together for the motorbike trip, and I didn't manage to get anyone together, and I didn't manage to get a group together of my friends to do something with ever again in my life. And then basically started to see how I was doing all the stuff, and a lot of people kind of lost the balance of like how much they do that is like a bit more sketchy, and how much like they do that is like super playing it safe. And that ends up with like a lot of people that I see basically playing video games quite a lot. And I don't want to be one of those, like, I'm going to sound like a old person now, but video games are kind of shite in that regard, that they ruin people's lives in the sense of that they feel like they're doing something without doing anything. And it doesn't always have to be like some crazy motorbike trip or something crazy on a motorbike, because those things also are too much. Like, for example, I did a trip through the Himalayas, which was for a content project for the YouTube channel, and it ended up, even though the trip in itself was good, it ended up being kind of production hell and sketchy in many regards, having to sleep outside in over 4,000 meters, and just the whole production process around it was terrible. But basically, it was too much, and it's perfectly fine to do like a motorbike trip that is focused on enjoyment. So that's kind of where the middle is, but you have to do something. You have to go outside and have to do something. This also goes for things outside of motorbike riding, like doing hobbies, like going surfing, going skating, meeting with friends. It is important to take part in life, otherwise it's kind of like a plant that doesn't get any water and slowly dies out. And a lot of like people who are like really, oh yeah, I never get on a motorbike, have a similar kind of approach, and these kind of mindsets overlap. I think everyone knows the situation at the gas station where like some dude comes up to talk to you and is like, oh yeah, like I would ride, but my girlfriend doesn't let me, and like, you know how it is. And it's such a bullshit argument, because no, I don't know what it's like, because I ride motorbikes, and it feels like these people then don't just restrict themselves when it comes to motorbike riding, but to all things in life in general, and with also like a rules set upon them from the outside, kind of stop being their own person. Because to some degree you can make these decisions if you want to ride motorbikes for yourself also, or if you want to do anything else in life, and it's just really, really important that you do something. It can be anything, doesn't have to be motorbike riding, but definitely do something in your life that you care about, that you get something out of, and that it also happens outside of work. So definitely like and subscribe if you like this video, and see you guys in the next one.